Hello. This talk is about rasterizing legal layer by our friend Pticek. Let's start.
Hello. I hope you can hear me clearly. My name is Zarko Pticek. You can call me Ptiki. I come from Pticek Legal Services, and this is a short content that we are going to talk about today. I hope that we are going to be talking about it because I would like you to interrupt me with questions as soon as you have one. So let's, yes? Oh, okay. So, where is this legal layer that we are going to talk about? First of all, when you enroll any law school, there is this lecture at, let's call it Law 101. It is where they explain to you where the actual law comes from. And what they do is they show certain hourglass and they say, okay, see the upper part? It is called meta law. It is natural law. It is where our law actually comes from. And that grain of sand at the neck of hourglass is where our constitution is. They teach this in every law school. So this is where the constitution is. So the grains after that come out of the constitution are law, and then at the bottom there is bylaw. For Serbian audience, this is called podzakonska akta. And this legal layer is basically, that we are going to talk about, is between a company and a person, you. Okay? And this legal layer actually represents legally binding contract between two persons. Here we have natural person, and here we have non-natural person corporation, or whatever in certain jurisdictions they are called. So as you can see, there is what we know, it's right, what we know, there is a law, there is a constitution, there is a law that is applicable, there is bylaw, and here is this legal layer that we are going to talk about. As you can see, in lectures they keep in every law schools, they don't address this, it's not put in this hourglass, it doesn't belong there. And we will see why. This is what the society makes. And this is strictly between two subjects of the law. Okay, so we have, when you ask me where does the right come from and where does the contract come from, it's obvious. Sorry. That your rights as a person come from the constitution and law and bylaw, and your contract comes from this layer down there. So, this is the difference between contract and rights. Let's start with rights. Rights are legal, social, and ethical principles of freedom or entitlement. Basically, your right is nothing more than what we agreed upon that we have. It is as simple as that. On the other hand, contract that we as a society, agree that we as individuals or corporations or whoever have. On the other hand, contract is basically the same thing, just between two certain individuals. So, to be established by the law, this contract, to be recognized by the law, these contracts are simply enforceable by the law. Okay? Your rights are also enforceable by the law, but also a kind of legal relationship that you form between yourselves is also enforceable by the law. So, contract can be, let's call it signed, can be achieved or executed verbally or in writing or even implied. For instance, when you go to a restaurant to sit and you sit there, you imply you want to make a contract with a food provider over there. You want to buy food or beverages or whatever. Anyway, rights, on the other hand, are not that we agree with each other. There is a certain system in various countries that have so-called sovereignty that provide us certain rights. So, human rights are provided internationally, or they are supposed to be provided internationally, and that what we call human rights are fundamental rights which person is inherently entitled simply because of being a human being. And there are civil rights. You maybe heard of civil rights movement several times. Civil rights are rights that are also, how do I say this concretely? Civil rights are those rights that gives us the right to make contracts. You understand? To participate in a certain degree in making law and being a subject and object of the law. Great example for civil rights is the civil rights movement led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in United States of America, where people that were black had no civil rights. They had no right to vote. Their will was not recognized as legally binding. They were outside of this system. Okay. Again. Okay. I hope I will start pushing the right buttons. What exactly is enforceable by the law? As you know, judicial power is vested in the courts of law. And enforceable by the law means that if we are in contractual relationship, we can go to court and be sure that our relationship, our contractual relationship, is enforced by that court of law. So basically what the contracts means, they are laws between two certain individuals, whether corporations or persons, doesn't matter, at least two. Okay, so that is enforceable by the law. And where does the contract come from? Well, contract is firstly conceived in some legal department of some company, Then it goes to public relations department of the company, and then it may or may not have external legal audit. This birth of contract is the most of contracts that we see when we deal with corporations. It is like this. So they have their own people, their own experts on various levels. There's legal department, PR department. You understand why PR department is important? So when you see the text, it does not look boring or repelling. PR department is there to conceal the most of the will that is going to be applicable and enforceable by the law. The life of a contract that comes from this type of corporation, for instance, gives other party no ability to negotiate because of unequal bargaining position. So it is, in legal theory, it is called adhesion contract, or take it or leave it. Those type of contracts, everyone here has signed at least once. Who has a mobile phone? You signed it, one way or the other. Who has a postpaid contract? You signed it personally. Who has prepaid card? Oh, 3, 4, 4 people. You implied it. There's no way around it. You implied it. You didn't have to go to sign it in person. The rules that your carrier or whoever is your mobile service provider has wrote, those terms and conditions, that contractual relationship applies to you, whether you like it or not. But if you didn't like it, why did you sign it? Oh, well, in Serbia there are 3 mobile phone carriers. Okay, for this conference, for just 3 days of this conference, there is one more mobile phone carrier within the premises of this venue, thanks to Mr. Luka Gerzic. But you cannot have mobile phone service unless you sign one of the 3, I don't know. In Holland, how many? Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can have 20, 25 companies. You still have, they all have the same thing. Okay? And there is nothing you can do about it. One thing is very important here. In certain countries, these adhesion contracts, or let's call it take it or leave it contracts, are supposed to be, when you go to court, the court is supposed, because you are unequal side, you are far less stronger side, you are weaker side of the contract, the contract will be represented in the mind of the judge, taking this into consideration. But this only applies, at least by the Serbian law, it only applies to contract imperfections and holes and contradictions or what have you. So if the contract is clear, and trust me, after these guys are finished, it's completely clear, especially if they had an external audit, then you are equal in the terms of the law. And we have birth, life, and death of contract is termination. one way or the other. Termination of the contract may be because of the breach of the contract, maybe because the time period ended, maybe what have you. But this is the end of the contract. Or termination of one contract can be achieved when the same company takes to the legal department and tells, okay, let's make new terms and conditions. And that is how previous contract is terminated. And here we will read the fine print. So we'll try to read the fine print. Really, really careful, and to see what is behind. Okay, there are some rights that are given. People like to call it their God-given rights. God had nothing to do with it. As George Carlin would say, why would God give different number of rights to different people in different countries if they are God-given? So in European Union, we are now talking just about personal data. In European Union, there is this data protection directive, and directive works that European Union has a consensus about directive, and then each country, member country, has to implement it into their law. So the objective of new directive that is going to be imposed is to give citizens back control over their personal data and to simplify regulatory environment for businesses. Right now, the state is like this. There are just strict conditions under which companies or businesses can collect data. But this applies to European citizens and European businesses. It does not apply to, let's say, New Zealand or Australian or Russian or non-EU members countries. So, by EU law, anyone that collects and manages your personal information must protect it from the misuse. Yeah, well, but how does he or she or business gets the right to collect data? Under Serbian law, Serbia is not a member of EU country. Serbia is not EU country, but under Serbian law, we have respected this directive, and it says only with your consent. And everybody, as we saw earlier today, gives consent without reading, without anything. Why do you give consent? Because if you don't give consent, certain applications or certain websites that you love to use, you will not use them. Was there a question? Okay. And here is how it's given when we use such. We have Google, for instance. It has terms and privacy issues. Here is privacy policy, and this is what basically states. It states what Google collects. Basically, it collects everything, and what is the information used for? Well, it's used for basically anything that they can imagine. And when that is passed through a legal department, through a PR department, and through external audit, it looks like this. We collect your device information, log information, location information, unique application numbers. That means Google has the right to know every single application that you had and what you do with your application if that application has a unique number. Local storage. We use that, as Google says. Google use it only to see if you can have more space, that you have enough space to install their applications. And cookies and, watch this, similar technologies. So, what Google does with that information, they combine them. They combine them. How do they combine them? We don't know. What do they use it? We don't know. But they promise that they will ask our consent for the purpose other than set out in this privacy policy. And this privacy policy is so broad that when Google asks you for anything, you just say, okay. Anyway, Google simply says that it can process your information other than the country that you are resident of. That means outside the country where you live. So, as a Serbian citizen, when I give my data to Google, it's gone. It's gone to Google, we saw that. They are processed, they are combined somewhere else for the purposes that I gave consent. Yes. I read this stuff. And after reading this, I have no idea what are they doing with my data, actually. And this is how it is written. Believe it or not, this is copy-paste from their terms and conditions. This is copy-paste. I didn't write this. What Facebook says, you have to find the page, and there is this statement, and first they say that our privacy is very important to them, and that they encourage us to read this. We are encouraged to read the contractual relationship, the terms and conditions of contractual relationships that we get into. I mean, I do understand that law text can be boring, but it doesn't mean that it does not apply. Okay, if you have law on privacy, or if you have a law on gravity, the same thing will apply, whether you like it or not, whether you know about it or not. So, you are encouraged to read the data policy and to use it to help you make informed decisions. What Facebook says. How do they share our content and information? Basically, when we delete stuff, they put it in recycle bin. It also says that it may be used for period of time. It doesn't say what period of time. Certain period of time. When we use Facebook applications, they may ask us for our permission, and when we publish our content, that means that we are allowing everyone, if we have this public setting, that we are allowing everyone who has internet and Facebook connection to have access to that content. Well, of course it does. Facebook is made for that. Facebook is tailor-made for our content to be public. Why would you expect a privacy from a network that promises you to be seen worldwide? That promises you that the sole goal of that network is to have as many shares, likes, and comments that you may have. What also Facebook says, they are able to deliver their services personalized content and make suggestions for you. Also, they use our information to send us marketing communications, and they use the information they have to help verify accounts and activity and promote safety and security on and off our services. I really admire the nerve that Facebook says that it will use my private data to promote safety and security of their service. How? They know, but this is complete PR. I didn't say BS, this is PR. Let's look at another network. Who knows what Elo is? 1, 2, 3, okay. Elo is basically a Twitter, okay? Just a little bit different. Elo does not serve advertisements and does not sell information about its users or use on the site on third parties. They will collect non-identifiable information about pages, general geographic locations like the city but not street address, the device we are using, an anonymized version of our IP address, and addresses of website that referred us to their site. So if you don't have a corporation that bases its business on gathering and selling and marketing of and for our information, then you have this. Then you have Elo that clearly states that they will not sell anything and they don't serve advertisements and the rest. Sorry, that's my typo. So what also they say? That they will protect Elo end users from spam, viruses, identity theft, illegal or harmful activities, and they use information to understand how people use the site. Which feature works, doesn't, and help develop and improve the site features and services. I'm like, okay, basically, you people don't collect anything about me. It's anonymized and non-identifiable. So you actually don't know who I am. You don't even try to know who I am because you don't care who I am. You just want to know how I interact with your product, with your site, and you want to make it better. So it can be done like that. I don't see where the money is in this model, but I don't care. From a legal point of view, I am perfectly clear to conclude the contract based on these terms and conditions. Let's go shortly to copyright and intellectual property, okay? The definition is the rights, remember what the rights are, granted to creators and owners of works that are result of human intellectual creativity. So in general terms, that is copyright. And copyrights are, intellectual property is copyrights, patents or patents, trademarks, design rights, and protection of confidential information. That is what intellectual property is. Various terms means various things. For instance, copyright, when an author has has developed something, whether it is a novel or any kind of work, doesn't mean it doesn't have to be artwork like painting or figure or whatever. It just has to be from a human being and to be original and to have some kind of intellectual creativity or spirituality in it. That copyright is granted as soon as the work is done. For copyright, you don't need to go anywhere to file file anything, to file any kind of notice or anything, to be recognized as an author. No. For patents, trademarks, and design rights, you do. There are intellectual property bodies within each country that gather data and they grant the right. Patent is the right that, or invention, for instance, is the right for 20 years when you make a patent, so you have exclusive right to collect money of its usage. Trademark is right of certain business to sell its products under the certain name or brand or trademark, so it has a label of quality to it. Okay? It also has to be registered. Design rights also. Protection of confidential information does not have to be registered, but it more or less fits into intellectual property rights. So let's see the fine print. How are the copyright and intellectual property dealt with here? Facebook. We specifically give the Facebook the permission to subject to our privacy and application settings. We grant them non-exclusive, transferable, sub-licensable, royalty-free, worldwide licenses to use any intellectual property content that we post or in connection with Facebook. That means whatever, anything you post on Facebook, it's theirs. It's theirs also. It is yours, but it's theirs. It doesn't mean that you don't have certain moral rights to it. Certain legislations recognize moral rights, but Facebook doesn't say anything about moral rights to be recognized as an author, etc., etc. They're not interested in that. They're interested in royalty-free, worldwide license, sub-licensable, non-exclusive, transferable. And what they say at the end, well, this is okay. This license ends when we delete our IP content or our account, unless our content has been shared with others and they have not deleted it. Just a question, does this ever comes to reality? Is this even possible to have? Can I have your question? No. It's another contractual party. Yeah. Instagram. Basically, it says nothing. This is nothing. It says, it doesn't mention what Facebook says, that we give or we do not give. It cannot be found. But we represent and warrant that we have the right to post that content. That means that we do not breach anyone else's copyright, okay? And that by doing this, we don't violate, misappropriate, or infringe on the rights of any third parties. And what it says that if we do that, we will have to pay all royalties, fees, and any other monies owed by reason of the content you post on or through the services. And we basically represent that we have legal right and capacity to enter into contractual relationship with them. As Facebook, Instagram is not for persons under 13 years of age. So, let's say there is a child that is 8 or 10 years of age, and it legally represents that it has legal capacity and right to enter into these terms and conditions. What will happen? Under their terms and conditions, they don't care. It's non-applicable. They just don't go there. They are not interested in that. They covered themselves with this. As we know, kids, like 10-year-olds, cannot have contractual relationships. Why? They are too young. They don't have that right yet. They are represented by their parents. And what this does, basically, it's a void, and it will be decided from case to case later. What is right to action? Certain right, for instance, to file a lawsuit is right to action. So it means that I, as a citizen, have a right to sue someone that breaches the contractual relationship or that breaches my rights. Important thing is to recognize here in European-based legislature, there are two types of rights: absolute rights and relative rights. Absolute rights are those rights you cannot give away. And right to file a lawsuit is one of those rights. You cannot waive your right not to be a person. You cannot waive your right to own things. You cannot waive your right on your body or to live. In USA, for instance, you can waive in certain jurisdiction over there. There is no distinctions between absolute and relative rights. All rights are relative. That means if they are given to you, you can waive them. You can say, okay, I don't mind. Under Serbian constitution, everyone is entitled to equal protection of his rights and proceedings before the court of law. So, you cannot waive your right to file a lawsuit away. And even if you do, it's null and void. Why? Because it's an absolute right. Let's see U.S. definition. The right to file a lawsuit is the privilege of instituting a lawsuit arising from a particular transaction or a state of facts, such as that are based on a contract or tort or civil wrong. It's a privilege. It's not given right. What is waiver under United States law? Intentional relinquishment of a right, claim, or privilege. The voluntary surrender of a known right either by express statement or by a conduct such as not enforcing the right. Yes? The question is, can I give someone right to kill me? That right is called euthanasia. Okay? But I can donate you my right to, let's say, this computer. It does not stop me from being a bearer of the rights of ownership. It just stops me from being owner of this computer. So that is big difference. That is huge difference. So let's see how the fine print does. Google. Some jurisdictions provide certain warranties, like implied warranty of merchantability, fitness for a particular purpose, and non-infringement. To the extent permitted by law, we exclude all warranties. All claims arising out of or relating to these terms of service will be litigated exclusively in the federal state of courts of Santa Clara County, California, USA, and you and Google consent to personal jurisdiction in those courts. Super. Like, let's say Google has done me wrong, has breached my rights, or even has breached its own terms and conditions with me. What am I supposed to do? Go to Santa Clara County, file a lawsuit. Let's see the others. Facebook. If you're a resident of United States or Canada, you are in agreement with Facebook Incorporated. Otherwise, you are in agreement with Facebook Ireland Limited. If they fail to enforce any of their rights, it will not be considered as a waiver. So, if the law says what waiver is, they just say no. We do not consider our lack of lawsuit to be a waiver of the right, even if it's written. And we all agree to submit to the personal jurisdiction of the laws of state of California in Northern District of California that is located in San Mateo County. So, everything they did is also without regard to conflict of law provision. Conflicts of law is how do you settle if different people have different rights, and each country has kind of law on resolution of conflict of laws. Okay? And they just said, resolution of conflict of laws, we'll just disregard that. No. The jurisdiction is in San Mateo County, and you agreed to submit to the personal jurisdiction. End of story. Yes, please. Good question. Question was if Google wants to sue me as a resident of Serbia, what court is, what will apply? It applies over there, but they don't sue. They just end your service. They terminate the contract and. Please find the difference between criminal actions and civil actions. If you do something criminal to them, they will file a criminal court action where you live. This is just for contracts. This is what we voluntarily sign and agree to without reading. And it still is construed as we agreed to it and read it. It's still applicable. Twitter. The waiver is not waiver. Okay, there is no such thing. And that is why they all write this down. Okay? And it will be governed by the laws of State of California, located in San Francisco County. And we waive any objection as to inconvenient forum. Inconvenient forum means that, watch this wording, it's so great. Inconvenient forum is place, venue, that is in our minds inconvenient for us to have dispute resolution settled or dispute resolved. And it's not that we agree upon that we will be under jurisdiction in San Francisco County. Very clever. We waive the right to object to such jurisdiction. I think so far that Twitter has the most creative legal team of all these companies. So you do not submit yourselves, you waive the right to object. Skype. If free or paid, consumer Skype branded services, we are contracting to Microsoft, to Luxembourg. For all other services, we are contracting with Redmond. Why is this? Because they bought Skype. And it was easier for them to leave as it is than to change the venue. Anyway, we and they irrevocably consent to the exclusive jurisdiction and venue to the state of federal courts in King County, Washington, for all disputes arising from them. And watch this. Excluding arbitration and small claims court. Okay? Let's go another one. To the extent permitted by law, LinkedIn shall not be liable to you or other for any indirect, etc., 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 losses, opportunities, punitive damages, whatever. They are not reliable. What is this? Some laws do not allow limitation or exclusion of liability, so these limits may not apply to you. For instance, Serbian law does not allow limitation or exclusion of liabilities. Serbian law says, you, whoever you are always liable for the damage that you do voluntarily and knowingly and by a gross negligence. In those two cases, you are always liable. And they say, okay, where if the law allows, we are not liable. We are just liable if we have to be liable. And again, personal jurisdiction in those courts where it is Santa Clara County. Now this is very interesting. Uber. These are terms and conditions for New Zealand. And it is the subject of the law of the Netherlands. And all disputes will be resolved exclusively by the competent court in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Can you imagine a New Zealander user of Uber going to the Netherlands just to resolve the dispute? So, you can see that even if you take, for instance, for London or for UK, Uber terms and conditions, those terms and conditions are also setting the Amsterdam as the jurisdiction for resolving disputes. Yes? Yes. But the service or the application will be settled exclusively by the competent court in Amsterdam unless we notify Uber within 1 month after Uber invoking its rights to pursuant to these provisions to commence court proceedings in Amsterdam, the Netherlands, that you demand settlements of dispute, claim, or controversy at hand before the relevant court competent by law. It took me, and this is my job, about half an hour to resolve. And the resolvement is this, as many other cases, simply do not arouse. They do not come to, they don't become fact, ever. Like, if you delete your website, your Facebook content, it will be deleted as a recycle bin, okay? And your intellectual property right is yours back. You revoke the license, no problem, if it's not shared or viewed or whatever by anyone else. It's basically the same thing. Okay, and there are few intelligent people that basically realize this, and this morning I had a conversation with Bernd Fix, and he said this: if it is free, you are the goods. So all those services mentioned are free. Well, someone is paying for them. And that someone are us. By our information, our data, our artwork, our rights. about rights. This is what aforementioned George Carlin said. Either we have unlimited rights or no rights at all. I personally, as he, inclined that we have rights that are limited by the rights of others. And there is what this has to be put with in this contractual relationship. That is what we have to put in. Until we reach that balance, like, no, you cannot possibly deprive me of me as a Serbian, of my Serbian, let's call it God-given or constitutional-given rights to have a trial, to have a public trial. I am given that right because I was born here and I'm a national of Serbian. I'm a national of Serbia. And just because I click somewhere and say I agree with or without reading, it should not be depriving me of those rights. Okay? Well, last year I talked a little bit about the golden rule. Who knows what the golden rule is? Okay? For those who don't know, the golden rule is who has the gold makes the rules. Okay? It just seems that the corporations are the ones with the gold. But where actually does that gold, does that money come from? Who gives them that? They earn it? Do they print it? Well, in United States, yes. But how do they become rich? We give them. We give them. Nowadays, we don't give them money. We give them our rights. Sometimes irrevocably, sometimes no. But the legislative power, in my humble opinion, is still within the people. Is still within one way or the other. It does not mean that we are going to choose, I don't know, 100 or 250 parliament members that will be very wise and that will make the law for the people justly or whatever. I just think that our legislative power is within this golden rule, and okay, you want me to give you what? My credit card number, my name, my complete data, my complete life? No, ain't gonna happen. I don't use Facebook for many years. I used it and I stopped. And it was kind of a relief. First it was very strange, like nobody's poking me, nobody is messaging me, and then I said, I'm just not there. Why? I don't like your terms and conditions. I don't like to be the subject of this contractual relationship. And I do have a choice, unlike mobile phone carriers. But mobile phone carriers are only allowed to make contractual relationship and as any other corporation within the law. You saw them say where the law, if it's applicable by law, if the law allows, then we are not liable for any damages. What if there is no such thing? What if you are liable for your own deeds, corporation or not, and you cannot ask anyone to waive that right, and waiver of that right is null and void? That would bring back the terms and conditions back to benefit of all of us. And I still have no answer to the question who will win. All I know is that small battles are being won from time to time, and small battles are being lost from time to time. I would like to thank you for the attention, and I'm free to answer your questions that you may have. Yes, please. I will repeat the question.
So you said that you didn't want to talk very much about criminal law, but there is one thing which is very interesting in Germany right now, and I would like to hear your opinion about it. Because German law says that if you run a website, like Facebook does, you are responsible to remove certain content, if
Yes.
it's inciting racism, hatred, these things. But Facebook has their community rules, which are very specific. And in Germany, there's a lot of discussion that they will remove any picture with naked skin, but not pictures of Adolf Hitler and concentration camps and these things. So the German government is making very loud noises that they want to hold Facebook responsible. And even the Justice Minister of Germany has said that tomorrow, on Monday, he will meet with Facebook. But what does that mean? Do you have an idea what it means? Can Germany file a criminal action against Facebook in Ireland? I would like to hear your opinion.
Okay, it has many aspects. One of them is censorship. Do you want to have Facebook segregated by the countries? That means if there is a Facebook in Iran or I don't know, Rhodesia or wherever, you may not, the users cannot be female. Do you want that? Basically, it means that Facebook will have Facebook for Germany with German applicable laws and principles embedded within the service, and some other rules for other countries that it is interested in having business with. So that's the first, and that is a slippery slope, in my humble opinion, is a slippery slope for censorship. Second thing, I do not see Facebook or any other service, liable for the content it did not create. The liability has to lie within the person who posted that content. I don't see violent movies being liable for domestic violence. I simply don't see that. The person that we are going to prosecute is the one who beats his wife and children, not the movie maker. So saying that basically Facebook makes this happen because it had platform, people are still going to do Hakenkreuz all over the buildings or all around the world because it's the ideology. So is that architect of that facade liable for the Hakenkreuz that is sprayed on the facade? I don't think so. But what I think that it should do, and this often happens in diverse societies that have a strong feeling of self-regulation. On Twitter, you can see certain movements and certain condemnations of certain deeds or tweets, just like that, just in an instant. So I think that basically Germany it has enough power to impose its own regulations to be worldwide. Because what I see in that particular case, that regulation should be, I mean, denial of a Holocaust should be prosecuted. And Facebook has to make this easier, but to ask of Facebook to delete any or not to publish any such content is you're going into censorship just like that. You know, I would never trust a corporation with my right. I would never. Sue me, let's go to criminal court, fine me, I will go to jail. Just don't make that policy up front. I don't need that kind of filter in advance.
Okay, thank you.
I hope this answer was satisfying.
Yes, it
for
was.
you. Thank you. Any more? Okay.
Recently, I decided as a photographer to make an online portfolio of my photos, and I started, with your influence, I started to read terms of service of different websites, and I found them very horrible. So, do you have any advice for people who are photographers or designers, what to do with their work?
If you want to make your portfolio, make it yours. It costs nothing. It costs almost nothing to register any creative domain name, to find cheap web hosting, to implement some free WordPress or whatever you have, or just to post the pictures. Make your own portfolio. I don't understand, why do you need Facebook? Oh, Facebook is visible. So what? Even if you have to use Facebook, use it with links. So you make your portfolio on your hosted website, on your domain that is on your name, and link. And it will have more or less the same impact as today. Google search will index everything, whether you like it or not, and you will be there, you will be visible. So you don't need, there is no need to give them those rights. Okay?
Next question. Yeah. Not sure how to bring this, but the biggest power of companies like Google, Twitter, Facebook, etc., is that they correlate information. Essentially, they're surveilling you. And to my best knowledge, there are two documents like the European Covenant of Human Rights and the Human Declaration of Human Rights, who specifically state that power to surveil people is very much limited and definitely does not lay by those companies. It also says those rights are inalienable, meaning you cannot write them off or sell them, which is essentially what you're doing by agreeing to an EULA. How come that national laws actually allow this while the international law forbids this?
It doesn't permit. It's a simple, yes, we are doing a surveillance without a court order, but it's not like we are surveilling you. You came to us, you came into contractual relationship with us, you agreed that we will do whatever we are doing with your data, and that's the outcome.
But if they
It's just when you rasterize this legal layer to the extent that there is a million dots within one dot, then you can start to think and see and ask questions like that. Is this basically surveillance without court order. Is this contractual relationship that needs to be enforced by law? Or is it a breach of other God-given right? So, and there is also a question of economic power and everything else.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question about, you were giving an example of...
Can you, sorry, can you talk to the mic, please?
Okay. So you gave an example of that all of us here signed some kind of contract, and you said that all of us that use a prepaid
Mobile phone number, yes.
yes, from our carrier, that we implied a contract.
Yes.
So what kind of contract did I imply?
Implied.
Yeah.
Implied means non-verbal, and it's not in writing. Implicable means that you, in Serbian language, it is called konkludentna radnja, that you made a move or any act that can be interpreted as conclusion or execution of the contract. So, if you buy a prepaid SIM card, it means that you want to use and put it in the mobile phone and use it. It implies that you want to use that mobile phone carrier. It doesn't mean it simply does not mean that you want to use the other. Okay?
Okay.
So the rules apply nevertheless. Their rules apply in that case too. So this is informal way of concluding a contract. It is known since the Roman law. It is way the law works. Okay?
Okay, but tell me, for example, when you sign a postpaid contract, you sign it for 1 or more years, right? But when you buy a SIM card, you may or may not have to register to give in your data. So, in which cases that contract applied for? If I mean, I can take out my battery of my phone and I use a prepaid card. Is that contract still applied or not?
It still applies. It still applies because you are the subject of that contract. They don't have to know your name, your address, your anything.
Yes, but do I use my SIM card?
Just to be brief, when you go to a restaurant
Yes.
and have a meal, does the waiter know your name, address, anything?
No.
No. Is that the contract?
Yes.
Yes, because you are obliged to pay for the prices that you read in the menu. So and they don't need to know your name or address or anything because you have to pay first and then use the service. They don't care who you are. In EU, there is a law, but it has anti-terrorist background. You need to sign your name to the clerk that sold you a prepaid card, so they know to give copy of your passport or ID. If you go to Greece, you cannot have domestic card if it's not copied from your without passport photocopy. So in some countries they want to know your identity. In some others they don't care, because why? You pay them first and then you can use only what you paid for. They don't care who you are. But the rules still apply. Okay?
Yes.
Otherwise you would not know how much 1 minute costs.
Yes.
Okay. Is that everything? Thank you kindly for your attention.